Welcome back to the Lions for Christ. I'm Pastor Noel, and today I have an absolute honor of welcoming a very special guest, Michelle Steiner. Michelle is the heart behind Michelle's mission. She's a writer, a speaker, advocate, photographer, paraeducator, and a woman whose life loudly declares one powerful truth. People may try to shut the door, but God can still open the way. Michelle has lived with an invisible disability, and through her life, she heard the kind of words that can crush a person if they let them. She has been told that she can't go to college. She's been told that she couldn't earn a degree. She's been told that she couldn't get published, that she would never have the job that she wanted. But Michelle didn't listen to those words. She kept going. She earned her bachelor's degree, became a published writer. She stepped into advocacy. She now helps students who need someone in their corner. And through Michelle's mission, she is encouraging, empowering, and educating others with a voice that was never supposed to be silenced. And I haven't even mentioned that her unbelievable photography. I mean, it's incredible. Michelle, I want you to hear this clearly before we even begin. We are honored to have you here. Your story matters. Your courage matters. Your perseverance definitely matters. And today, we don't just want to hear what you overcame. We want to celebrate the woman God has shaped through it. So welcome to the Lions for Christ. Michelle, when did you first realize that your learning journey was going to look a little different than everybody else's?
I found out that my learning journey was going to look different from other people when I was very young. In fact, I was diagnosed with having a learning disability whenever I was in kindergarten. My teacher noticed that I was really struggling in the classroom. She saw that I had difficulty with writing my name, tying my shoe. I also had trouble with dot-to-dot pages, and she recommended that I get tested for having a learning disability. And sure enough, I have one. And that came as a surprise to my parents. I was my parents' first child, so they didn't have a lot to base typical childhood development on, and you can't see the disability. And that changed my life and the life of my parents forever. I can remember my mom and dad explained to me that I had a learning disability and that I learned differently, and I had to repeat the grade in a new school in our district. And I began to receive specialty instruction and accommodations. And when I was really young and first diagnosed, they didn't give it, they didn't call it dyscalculia. They didn't know how having visual perception would affect me when I got older with not being able to drive. And they didn't know I would have limited hand dexterity.
Mm.
But they did know that I was not going to be a math genius at that age. The psychologist that evaluated me or the school staff, they knew that going into the gate.
I would
And
argue that a majority of the population of the earth is in the same boat. They're not going to be
right,
math
right,
geniuses. So yeah,
right, exactly.
so far you sound normal to me.
Right.
Can you explain a little bit about the what did you call it again? What was the name of the
Dyscalculia, it's a math
dyscalculia?
learning disability. Yes. So
Okay.
what my brain has difficulty with how numbers work. It's not that I see numbers backwards. It's that I have trouble with how they will work. Like I will get lost in the steps of a sequence of a math problem. I don't know all my multiplication and my addition and subtraction and all those fun facts. I don't know those. I'm not able to tell time on the face of an analog clock. I can see that there's numbers. I can see there's lines, and I know that it's round, but it doesn't make any sense to me. And I also confuse my right from my left. And even if I use a calculator, there's not a guarantee I'm going to get the answer correct. I can put numbers in a calculator, but I somehow my brain still gets lost in that process, and sometimes I can still get the wrong answer with that.
Right. Yeah. And math can be confusing. I mean, simple
Hmm.
math can really trip people up in a hurry.
Yep.
Just ask my wife with my checkbook. Yeah, I get
Yeah.
tripped up on numbers and math too. So So yeah,
Yep.
I can appreciate that. But yours is a little bit different than just,
Right.
not being, you're you're you struggle to comprehend the concept behind math and so forth, right? Am I getting that right?
Right. Right, exactly. A person maybe math isn't quite their forte. They might go take a math class, they get some tutoring, and they might be able to squeak by and get a C or a little bit higher. For me, it's not to say I can't get a good, well, I've never had a great grade in math on my own, without supports, but other people have. I mean, that's not to say someone with a math disability can't get an A or a B in a math class. It's a lot of hard work. And for me, I just simply numbers and I just do not get along. So I mean that's the difficulty. And it also goes just beyond a math class. When I confuse my right from my left, that's something that has always happened since I was young. Not being able to tell time, budgeting is really difficult for me. Uh, One thing I am usually decent at, and it's never a sure thing though, is if you give me dollars and I go into the store and I have 20 bucks, I can visualize and get a range of how much I'm spending. And a college counselor said, "Oh, you understand the relationship between money. If you give me a debit card or a credit card, it's too abstract and I end up spending more." But it's never a set in stone thing. I can still run short on things too, but it gives me sometimes a better understanding of what I'm spending. And I mean, those are those little things that just kind of impact my life, but it's different for everybody. There are some people that have a math disability that are not so great with coins or money. You can tell them that a dime is worth 10 cents. They know that, but they can't understand that 10 pennies make a dime. Where I can understand that, it just takes me a long time to be able to count a lot of that as well.
Yes, you just need a little extra time to be able to
Mm-hmm.
perform that
Right,
function. Yes. Yeah. All
exactly.
right. What were some of the things that some of the adults told you while you were growing up? Were they supportive or discouraging, or what was that like?
I had a nice mix of really great teachers that understood and did everything they could do to help. And I had other ones that didn't quite understand. I can remember my first learning support teacher. I had the privilege of running into a few years ago. And I got to thank her. And she said, "Oh, it was also my mom and dad. If they had a concern, they would call the school. And if she had a concern, she would call my mom and dad. And they worked together to make sure that I got the services that I needed. And I've also had teachers who weren't very understanding. I had a learning support teacher when I was in high school who did not think that I could handle college because of my difficulty with math. And she suggested a trade school. And I have nothing against trade schools, but number one, nothing interested me that they were offering. Number two, that some of those programs would have been a lot harder with my disability. I'm not able to drive, so I don't think anyone wants me driving a cop car or a police car. I certainly don't think anyone wants me to cut their hair. There's math and cooking, and I cannot program a computer to save my life. So I don't think any of those programs would have been easy for me. And I decided I was going to go to college despite not being able to, or just having some of those difficulties. But I did have someone who really inspired me that God brought in my life. There was a student teacher when I was in 11th grade, and she told me, "You can go to college. You know how to study, and you're a hard worker." And I was amazed because I thought, well, isn't college for the smart people? And everyone's telling me I can't do this. And she said, "Well, there's people that are at college that are in remedial classes and they have disabilities." And I never heard that before. And I decided, and I cannot remember what her name was, but I wish I could because I love to thank her because that was the voice that got me through college when I was really struggling. And I can remember at college, unfortunately, those voices still followed me with that discouragement for a long time. I had a psychiatrist who evaluated me so I could get the accommodations that I needed. And my scores were so low that he said, well, based on these scores, you're most likely not going to go beyond community college. And
Wow.
when I asked for a calculator, even though I know it wasn't going to help me, I had a professor that said, oh no, we use our brains in this class, not calculators.
Mm.
I had an advisor who was telling me that I was going to have limited job choices when I graduate because I would not know how much art paper to give for an art lesson. And I had people that were telling me too, peers that were saying using disability accommodations is cheating.
Oh,
So
wow.
I had a
Wow.
lot of discouragement. And then with the getting married, with the relationships, I did have people that rejected me for having a disability. But I remember I was doing an internship and there was a woman who was single. And she said, you know, you may never find somebody because of your disability. And that was pretty discouraging to me.
Why would somebody say something like that?
I
That
think it's
doesn't.
because she didn't have, she was older and she wasn't married and but at that age I still couldn't, it was hard for me to separate those, that idea that okay, someone's saying something, is this true or is just somebody's opinion. So that was really hard to hear all that. But what I did was I pushed aside a lot of those opinions. I eventually got the accommodations after I had a professor that was understanding, and I was able to pass her class. Didn't do very well, but I passed. And I graduated with my associate's degree in early childhood education. And I moved out on my own for a while and I really enjoyed my freedom. I loved being able to take the bus or walk wherever I needed to go, had some temp jobs, still really struggled with my purpose though. I wondered, we would go to church and they would talk about, oh, God's good plan for your life. And I'm like, well, where is my good plan at? I mean, I have these temp jobs. Where am I going to meet somebody? Everybody in my life is in a relationship or they're getting their lives started. And I just wanted more for myself. And be careful what you wish for because I ended up having to move back in with my parents for financial reasons. And I could just feel this is where God was leading me. I can remember I found a program at university that had the least amount of math and science possible. It had disability accommodations, and I even had a ride there. My mom went to church and was talking with uh, my cousin, and she worked on campus, and she goes, well, I'd be happy to take Michelle to school. So everything lined up. I was even able to graduate debt free. I had the funding to go back, and it was a much better experience when I went back to university. I used the disability accommodations. I had a note taker. I had extra time on tests. I had tutoring. And I felt confident to go up to a professor and say, hi, my name is Michelle. I have a learning disability. These are the supports I'm going to need. And most of them did everything they could do. The professors to help. Some didn't quite get the memo, but I understood. That's okay too. And I did so much better. I made Dean's List for a semester and I graduated with a bachelor's degree.
Wow, that's amazing. That that
Thank you.
that is so encouraging. And you know, I love how the whole irony of people telling you that you had limitations and you weren't going to be able to do certain things, and God just kept putting people in front of you that were going to
Mhm.
help you to accomplish that anyway. And they're like, yeah, God's like, watch this, watch
Uh-huh.
this, and he helped you do it anyway,
He
despite
did.
whatever the other people. I love it whenever people try to put limits what on what people can do when God created them for a purpose. You know,
Exactly.
if it's in His will, you're going to accomplish it. Nobody's going to be able to stop it from happening. So
Right.
yes.
Exactly. And I can remember when I was really discouraged at one point, there was somebody that said, well, didn't you pray about it? And I said, I prayed about it. And then I realized, but then God gave me something even better that I could have ever imagined. And it was giving that over to Him. And that's something in my life that I still continue to do. Like, okay, God, I'm concerned about this, but I'm giving it to you. And He just turns it into something better.
Oh, that's a great message. I love that. Yeah, give it to God.
Yeah.
Let him take it. Trust Him. Trust him. He
Hmm.
hasn't let you down yet, has he?
No, he hasn't.
No, no. Yeah. So how did your Christian parents adapt to and support you while you were growing up? And how do they still encourage you today? Like what are
Right.
some of the things that they're still involved in with your life?
My parents were great. Yeah, with having Christian parents, my mom and dad always raised me with church and going and being involved. That was really important and praying for me. I can just remember that. And they also advocated for me. They would go to all those meetings and they would speak up for what I needed. And then when I got older, they would say, we're going to your IEP meeting. Is there anything you want us to talk about? And I would tell them, and they would get back to me on what was discussed. Now we have kids that are able to go to their meetings when they get older, but that was not the case whenever I was growing up. But I was lucky to have parents who did that, and they showed me how to advocate for myself. And they were great with rides, especially whenever I was a young child that was being bullied in school and I wasn't connecting with my peers. And I found a faith-based art group that was outside of my school district, and they would take me to these meetings, and I got to meet other peers that didn't go to my school. And I also got that chance to have acceptance and then to have that relationship with Christ that I didn't really have before that. And that really made a huge difference. But even as an adult, they would take me places and they're great. I can still call my mom and dad up. I'm really blessed to still have them here in my life. And I still call them up for advice if something's happening. And they're very good on with that as well. And it's just such a blessing to have them.
That's great. But you have somebody else in your life too now,
I
right? Do you want to
do.
talk about that?
Sure. I have my husband, Ron.
Oh, wait,
I
hold
met,
on. Didn't that lady say that you're never going to find a
yeah.
relationship as
Oh, she was wrong. Yeah, I ended up, and I mean, that was one of those things where I was so tired of being in broken relationships because I did have boyfriends and none of them really worked out. Some said, I can't be with you because you have a disability. I can remember my ex breaking up with me and he was telling me, I think you could drive if you wanted to, and I'm tired of taking you places. And then there was just some other really horrible people that I was involved with. And I finally just was tired of it and I prayed. I said, God, do not send me anybody until it's the right person. And that was one of those things that God was really faithful with doing. And he was showing me little signs along the way. I can remember I was volunteering at our local arts center and I had a friend that asked me, oh, are you seeing anyone right now? And I said, no. And he goes, I have a feeling you're going to meet someone at a place like this. And that's where I met him. And it turns out, he met me when I was volunteering at the Arts Center, and I was walking down the street with a red dress on. He thought, "Who is that girl in that red dress? And where is she going?" And it turns out we were going to the same place, and we knew mutual friends, and we got to know each other. And then another friend had a dream a few years later, and I didn't place this until right after our wedding. He said, Michelle, he went, and my friend from church said, I had this dream about you. You were standing in front of the courthouse wearing a vintage dress, and I don't know who the guy was, but it was a wedding dress. And I'm like, okay, the vintage dress I can see, that's my style. Why would I be standing in front of the courthouse? And who is this guy? And when we had our reception, we had it at the art center that we met. Our photographer took us on a little walk up to the park and over that overlooks the courthouse. And when I got the wedding pictures back, I remembered the dream because there I am standing in that white vintage dress with my husband and the courthouse in the background.
Oh, wow, that's crazy. That is
Hmm.
amazing. Oh my goodness. Wow, that just like gave me chills.
Uh-huh.
Ooh, wow. That's a great story. I love that. I love that. So, can you tell me a little bit about your testimony? Like, when did you first come to know Christ and become a believer?
When I was a very young child, I was raised Catholic, but my parents were open to other denominations, so I went to a vacation Bible school and I raised my hand to accept Christ when I had to be like 3 or 4, maybe a little bit older. And my parents and I, we still went to the same church though. We never went back to that one for the vacation Bible school. But I was still raised with faith in our house. And then it's when I was the teenager and I started going to that faith-based art group, and I started to see the relationship side of God. And that's when I really started to live for that and to know that this is what looked right for me in my life. And I think that that was the real turning point. I could just see how God was just working through a lot of that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And it's what's also amazing about that is, people say that you're maybe a little slow at math, but
Hmm.
you're way ahead of most people on earth when it came to finding Christ. If you found him
Yes.
at 3 or 4 years old, you're way ahead of the curve on that one. You got it.
Yeah,
You
I
got it.
got it. I mean, I really did. Yep.
I'd rather have Christ than a mathematician's brain any day. So yes.
Same here. Exactly. And God makes everybody different. There's things
Yes,
that
yes.
I can't do math, but some other person can't do English, and we all work together. And I think that's, not to get too far ahead of myself, but sometimes that's one of the blessings when I work in a school because everybody does something different.
Yes.
And what one person can't do, the other person can do.
Absolutely. Yeah. So speaking of that, what do people often misunderstand about invisible disabilities in general?
Well, we're so inclined to thinking about disabilities are the ones that we can see. People often think we're so used to seeing the wheelchair and or maybe a cane or maybe visual facial features such as Down syndrome, that that's what we associate with disability. And those definitely are valid disabilities. But when we hear about disabilities we can't see, like learning disabilities or chronic pain or autism, we sometimes have people have a tendency not to believe them. I get people that'll tell me, "Oh, you have a learning disability. Oh, you don't look like you're disabled." And I have to explain, well, some disabilities we can see, some we can't. And then they'll think, "Well, I'm giving you a compliment." And I have to explain there's nothing wrong with whether we can see a disability or we can't see one. It's not a bad thing to have a disability. So I think that's one of the things, and people just don't like to believe that. Another thing is I hear a lot people that know me. Well, you've overcome your disability. Well, no, I've had success, but I'll always have a learning disability. It's not something in my life that is going to go away. It's something that I have learned how to develop strategies around. And then I also get people that'll think, "Oh, you're going to grow out of it." I've heard that when I was younger, or people will say it's all in your head that, or can somebody teach you? And I'm not against education at all, but we've sat and tried to do the face of a clock for years. That doesn't work. There's just some things that just simply don't work. So those are some of the really misconceptions that we hear a lot when we hear about disabilities.
Right. Yes. I have a nephew who he's
Hmm.
autistic, and
Hmm.
he's a functioning autistic, but at the same time, he so he'll talk to you and but really he talks at you a lot, and
Right.
so you just kind of listen and you
Hmm.
yes, yes, and you kind of go through everything with him, but he doesn't know how to like read facial expressions and
Right.
understand, you know, that maybe what he's saying isn't really registering with the people, or he may be saying something that's a little hurtful and he doesn't realize it because he doesn't understand.
Right.
And so, you have to kind of roll with it. And yeah, I mean, it's something that he was never going to grow out of it. He has to learn how to live with it, and he has to learn
Right.
the tools to be able uh, to communicate better and to function
Hmm.
better. And it's really an indictment on other people, though, because they're the ones that don't understand, where he's
Yes.
coming from, right?
Uh-huh.
So tell
Right.
me a little bit about what advice you would give educators or parents or even pastors like myself or leaders who work with students with different learning disabilities? Like, what kind of advice would you give them?
One of the first things I would say is meet the person where they're at and see what do they need because everybody's going to be different. With having a learning disability, some people might experience it differently. Even people with math disabilities. Some might be able to understand certain concepts, others may not. Especially with driving, there's people that can drive with a disability and others that can't. So I think it's learning about what that individual person needs. And it's focusing on the things that they are good at. If they're good at reading, well, then definitely focus on trying to do more with reading or giving them things that they're interested in, especially with serving at church. If you know someone can do this really well, then that's a gift that God gave them. So we put them in those things, and God gave everybody things that they can do. Not everybody can do the same things. And thank goodness, because then nothing would, if everybody focused on one area, then there would be so many other gaps of things that wouldn't get done. So I
Yes.
think that's a big thing is doing that and just really seeing them as a value as being valuable and just how God would view them as valuable in his eyes too and whole and just looking at them at that and just really just going for what that person and having that compassion and that empathy.
Right. Yeah. I think on our phone call, I had mentioned
Hmm.
the parable of the duck and the squirrel
Yeah,
and
right.
yeah, the duck was being judged because he couldn't climb a tree, and it's like,
Hmm.
wait, what's going on? That's not that's not what they're intended for,
Right.
and we need to look for people's strengths and help them in those areas. It doesn't mean
Hmm.
that we don't help them with things
Right.
that they struggle with, because they may be able to get better with some practice,
Right.
or they just may need a little more time, a little more
Of
patience with
course.
it in those areas. But we don't disclude them because they can't do a certain thing.
Hmm. True.
That's an indictment on humanity, if you ask
Yes.
me. And
Right.
that's definitely not something that God teaches. God,
Hmm.
you know, God would teach us to focus on the good things about people and the things that they do well, and that's their gift. That's their
Yes.
gift, and that's your gift to us, is your ability to see through some of these things and to be an advocate for these students
Hmm.
who may need some additional help in different areas, and you can recognize those things that most people can't. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Yeah.
it does because there is that gift that God has right, and God gave me those gifts, and it's like it's including people and looking at maybe even as a pastor, looking at well, how can our church support that? What are ways we can make sure we're including people rather than excluding ones that have disabilities? Because sometimes that can be really intimidating to a family that has children with disabilities or a person that might come in there, that can be a really hard thing for them if they come in and they don't feel like there is that place or they don't feel like they can have the support that they need.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's the last thing that somebody who's struggling with a learning
Hmm.
disability needs
Right.
is somebody uh, to put pressure on them that they don't need.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
I mean, why do that? That
Right.
doesn't solve anything. And I think that's
Exactly.
also a good you make a good point that if there is somebody in your church that has a learning disability, maybe get to know them a little bit
Yeah.
better and learn, like, hey, is there something that I can help you with
Right.
the lesson that maybe they just need it read to them differently, maybe they just
Right.
need something explained a
Hmm.
little bit different. There's different ways that you can help with that, and you don't have to be you don't have to have a learning disability degree in school
Right.
to do that. You just have to have
Right.
some compassion. Little compassion goes a
Right.
long ways. Yeah.
It certainly does.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So tell me a little bit about your your publications and the things that you're working on.
Sure. My first article was published on the Mighty, and I was so frustrated. I was diagnosed with limited hand dexterity, and I could not open up our door when my husband and I moved into our house. So I wrote about it. There was a call about what's a seemingly easy task for others, but it's hard with your disability, and it got published. And it was one of the most healing things that I ever did when that got published. And that encouraged me to write more articles for them and to write for other places as well. And I also have started my own blog called Michelle's Mission, where I write about my life with a learning disability and I feature my photography. And my photography's also been featured in magazines. And I take a lot of my photos when I'm on my walks. And because I can't drive, I get that chance to literally stop and smell the roses and get to see all the details in a flower that I would miss if I was concentrating on the road. And
Yeah.
I think rather than being sad, I look at that and think, oh, there's so many things I would miss if I was driving. And then I started to realize that having a disability, there was just so many things that I was missing out on that I almost missed out on a lot of beauty in that I almost missed.
Yes, and I tell you what, if you haven't seen her pictures, you need to go to Michelle's Mission and you need to visit her Facebook page because they're breathtaking. And all my military buddies are going to make fun of me for saying that, but I don't care. They're breathtaking. They're beautiful. Those pictures are they're incredible. That is
Thank
an
you.
extraordinary talent that you have.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yes, absolutely. So are you working on any other writings or do you have any books or anything in the works?
I do have I've been published in a couple anthologies, and I still don't have that book out yet. I still have to work on it. So I got to sit down and actually start writing a book about my life. And I have a couple other things that I'm working on. I'm also at a disability policy cohort where we're working on uh, laws and like bill like how to be a better advocate. So we did some legislation or like we talked to some politicians in our groups. Mine was with doing a counselor compact. But other people had different topics that they were presenting, and we're just learning different ways on how to advocate and about with having a disability and the policies that govern that.
Awesome. Man, that is amazing. That's incredible. What I, I don't see how people can keep up with you, to be honest. I mean, you've got so much going on that that's incredible. And I have to do this. I apologize, but
Sure.
you're and it says it on the wall behind you, so that's the only reason
Uh-huh.
why I'm bringing it up.
Yeah.
You're from Butler, Pennsylvania.
I am. Yes.
That's been in the news in the
It
last
has been.
a
Yes.
couple of years, right?
It has been. Yes. That's where it's at.
All right. Yeah. Were you around when the commotion
No,
happened
we
or?
were no, we were away that day. But
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Well, hey, I mean, at least you have that little tidbit too of history. Like,
Yes.
yeah, I was there. I live in Butler. Yeah. So you
We
know
live in
exactly where all that was
yeah.
happening. So yeah.
Right, right.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, we're getting close to running out of time here, and I really hate that because I think I could just talk to you all night and about all these different projects and things, and the things
Uh-huh.
that you're telling me here are it's really good information that I know our listeners are gonna they're gonna take it in and they're gonna be able to use it with
Uh-huh.
people that they know because
Oh,
I guarantee there's a lot of uh, j- just about everybody on earth knows somebody who may have a disability or something that they need help with. And so this is a very good subject for them to get to listen
mhm.
in on and to come from somebody who's an advocate who's walked that life. Uh,
Yes.
that means something. And the fact that you're helping these kids in the classroom is incredible. And I know that they appreciate what you're doing for them.
Oh.
I guarantee it. I mean, I do. I know they do because I know that they they need somebody in their corner, right? Just like
Right,
you do.
right, exactly.
Yeah. So
Yep.
you get to be that blessing to them. So you get to pay it forward, and that's a great story.
Yes, I find it so rewarding to be able to do that because I know what a lot of them are feeling at that time. Not every single one of them, but I get that chance to be that reassuring voice that says you are smart, you can do it, and I get to show them how to advocate too. So it's a real blessing.
Yes, absolutely. And some of them may not appreciate it now, but
Hmm.
a few years from now, they'll understand a little bit better maybe, and they'll come
Right.
back and they'll say, Michelle, thank you so much for helping me out. Yeah, I'm sorry I gave you such a hard time, but you were helping me and you did a great job, and you'll get all those rewards at that point. So yeah,
Yes.
yeah. All right, is there anything else that you wanted to say before we close out?
Nope, I think we covered
We
everything.
covered everything. Great. Great. All right. All right. Well, Michelle, I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of the Lions for Christ. And your story is not just encouraging, it is powerful. It is convicting. It's the kind of story that makes people stop and rethink their careless words that they've spoken over somebody else's life. Because people told you no, and they
Mhm.
told you that you couldn't become what you became. And they tried to shrink down your future to the size of their expectations, right?
Mhm.
But by the grace of God, you kept walking, you kept learning, you kept believing, and you kept showing up. And that is an extremely important characteristic that you can show other people, especially these young students that you're helping.
Mhm.
Your character, you kept showing up, you kept putting one foot in front of the other. And I think that's extremely important, especially in a young developing life. And now look at what God's done with you, right? I mean, you
Mhm.
earned your degree, you found your voice, you became a
Mhm.
published writer, you became an advocate, you became a helper and encourager to students who need someone who understands them. You turned the very area where people underestimated you into a place of ministry, compassion, and strength. And that's not small. That's not ordinary by any means. That is a testimony. And that testimony is what people are going to be drawn to with you, Michelle. So, Michelle, thank you for your honesty, your courage, your faith, your willingness to use your life to lift others up. You are proof that a diagnosis may explain part of the journey, but it
Mhm.
doesn't define the person. And it sure doesn't get to outrank the purpose of God, right?
Yes,
God's purpose is going to happen, right? Yeah.
exactly.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate you being on the show, Michelle. Do you mind if we close with a prayer?
Sure, no problem.
Perfect. All right, let's pray. Lord, thank you for Michelle and for the beautiful testimony you're writing in her life, and thank you that when others spoke limits, that you still had a purpose for her, and you didn't let that stop her. And thank you that no diagnosis, no label, no struggle, and no human opinion is greater than your calling. And I pray for every person that's listening who's been underestimated, who's been discouraged and dismissed, or told they couldn't become who you created them to be, and give them the courage to keep going. Surround them with people who speak life, truth, and hope. Bless Michelle, her family, her marriage, her mission, her work with her students, and every person who will be encouraged through her story. In Jesus' name we pray, Lord. Amen.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Seriously,
I appreciate you being on. What a blessing
enjoyed.
you are. And
Oh, thank you.
just want to give some final words of encouragement before we leave. So, friends, Michelle's story reminds us that being underestimated is not the same as being disqualified. Somebody may have spoken limits over your life. Somebody may have told you no. Somebody may have looked at your struggle, your disability, your past, or your weakness and decided they knew your future, but they didn't. God gets the final word. Your path may look different, but different does not mean lesser. Your road may be harder, But harder doesn't mean impossible. Your dreams may require more support, more grit, and more prayer, but that does not mean it's out of reach. Remember to like and share and comment this episode. Go and visit Follow Michelle's Mission at michellesmission.com. Learn more about her work and share this episode with someone who needs to be reminded that God still opens doors people tried to close. And if this episode encouraged you, please follow the Lions for Christ, share it with friends, and visit thelionsforchrist.com. Donate what you feel called to donate. I don't get paid for what I do, and every dime goes to the Lions for Christ ministry. You can also find us on social media. Just search the Lions for Christ. And again, Michelle, thank you for your courage, and God bless your mission. Strength redeemed, purpose restored. This is the Lions for Christ.